And welcome back now. The South African Social Security Agency, SASSA, has expressed concern at the country's high youth unemployment rate, saying that approximately 60% of all social relief of distress grant applicants are young people. Now, it further states that all of the applicants, youth and non-youth, of those, approximately 5% hold tertiary qualifications. And SASSA says it has also made progress with regard to payments of its special grant, which was initially introduced to assist struggling South Africans to cushion the economic impact of COVID-19. And according to SASSA, as of last month, over 5 million applicants have been approved, with just over 4 million of those applications already paid. For this and other developments in the payment of SRD grants, we're joined by SASSA's national spokesperson, Paseka Letsatsi. Paseka, good to have you with us once more. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina, and thanks for having me.
So let's start with the progress regarding the processing and payment of the SRD grant since we last spoke.
No, the good thing, and in fact, the good news, Sakina, is that we have made progress as far as paying people, especially those who were declined for one reason or the other. But obviously, we had a backlog in terms of paying, especially people who applied in April when the new regulations came into play. We took a decision as management that we need to make sure that when it comes to August, we need to make sure that by September, we do not necessarily deal with the backlog. And I think we are delighted to inform the public today that we have dealt with that particular backlog. When we go to September, we will definitely be dealing with people only who have applied during that month.
So again, just with regard to that particular backlog and those who have, of course, just fallen outside of the ban, just explain once again to those who may not know, Paseka, people are very frustrated. What were some of the new parameters that were introduced?
The new regulations, remember we were using the National State of Disaster. We then had to use the Social Assistance Act to make sure that we process the new applications. However, we know that we got some of the complaints in this instance. We got complaints that people who were excluded because of the threshold, which was 350. We know that the minister introduced the draft regulations to say the public must make a comment. The threshold, it's proposed that it must move from 350 to 624. But obviously, the mandate of the South African Social Security Agency is to administer the distribution of social grants. The issues of policy, regulations, and so on lies squarely with the Department of Social Development. And we think the Social Development, when they are ready, they will definitely announce those particular regulations.
So let's just explain that a little further, Paseka. So as things stand, the threshold is 350 Rand. So what does that mean? If you have 350 Rand in your account, what happens, and what does the lifting or the increase in that threshold mean?
We had an engagement with the civil society. We had engagement with majority of people who are concerned in terms of the administration of the SRD grant. And I think the difference here is that, Sakina, if, for an example, we do the means test, you cannot have anything that is more than 350 into your account. For an example, anything that is above 350, therefore the system will then automatically reject you. And the new proposed regulations is that it increases it it might increase it. I have to be very careful in terms of how I say it. It might increase it from 350 to 624, which simply means that it will then accommodate many people who have been complaining that they are actually excluded in the system and 50 in their bank account.
All right, so that threshold, as you say, it's not confirmed yet, but there could be a lifting, an increase in the threshold from 350 to 624 rand. Nkululeko Ndlovu has a question, says, can you please ask Paseka why they say that we have alternative sources of income while we don't have anything? And this speaks to the monies in people's account that disqualifies them in certain instances from qualifying for the SRD grants.
No, we understand the question of Nkululeko very well. And I think the intention here, Sakina, is that the grant was meant specifically for people who do not have any source of income whatsoever. And in some instances, you find that when the means test is done, we check the bank accounts of people, we found that there is an inflow of money. And if there is an inflow of money which is more than 350, obviously the system will then reject you. However, we still want to reiterate that individuals who are affected by the processes of being rejected, they have a recourse mechanisms. People can then be able to make an appeal to the Department of Social Development if they feel that they have not they've been excluded unfairly so. For an example, Sakina, you may have a person in this instance who appears in the database of the UIF, and a person would then explain to us that I have not been working for the past 10 years and I don't understand the reason why I'm excluded based on the fact that I appear on the database of UIF. We always encourage people that do not make a reapplication, because if you do the reapplication, the system will then automatically reject you. So we simply request people to be in touch with those institution concerned or those department concerned, so that their names can then be removed in those in the database of that particular department or an entity, and therefore make an appeal so that when we do the reconsideration or when we process the application, their name does not appear on other government databases.
People have also expressed frustration in that regard, Paseka, in that they struggle to, in fact, get people to assist them, be it SASSA or even UIF or at SARS. So how do you then navigate that? Because if someone says to you, using the UIF example, that I haven't worked in 10 years, they try to go to UIF. UIF then tells them that, listen, there's nothing we can do. And now they're in limbo. And this is where, one hopes that as the various government departments and entities, you guys would be able to come to the assistance of these frustrated applicants and streamline the system.
Not true, Sakina. I think what we are doing as an organization, I think this process has taught us that as government, we must work as one, government departments and government entities, to make sure that we achieve a particular positive goal. And in this instance, we have meetings, regular meetings with those entities or government department concerned. For example, we have a meeting with the Department of Home Affairs, we would have meetings with UIF, so that when we identify some of these bottlenecks, we're able to agree as organization and all those entities concerned that how then we're able to deal with them and make sure that these are not stumbling blocks which are going to exclude people. And I'm delighted, and I can say this with confidence, Sakina, that the meetings which we hold with the UIF, with Home Affairs and so forth, so far we have observed that there is positive spin-offs, in a sense that we're able to identify those backlogs. We're able to make sure that we agree as management that if we identify that this is a problem, how then do we quickly make sure that it gets resolved? So we can basically say that we are positive, and we'll make sure that we continuously meet with these particular government departments and entities to make sure that if people are frustrated, for an example, which I made earlier on about a person would say, I've got 10 years, I've not been working, and unfortunately I'm excluded. We're able to identify it, we're able to come up with proposed solutions, and we implement them without further delay.
Paseka, and I didn't know how to quite internalize this one, where you express concern at the number of young people applying for the grant. Now, I want to ask you, just how bad the situation is, but we shouldn't be surprised, because you look at the high level of youth unemployment in the country, and it would make sense that a large number of young people would be applying for this grant.
No, true, Sakina. I think SASSA is part of the South African government. Whatever happens in the country is bound to affect SASSA. And we know that the unemployment rate in the countries would sit above 60%. So we would definitely expect that when we introduce a grant like this, majority of people will be affected. The only thing which we wanted to clarify, Sakina, is that there was a problem in terms of communication, where information was put out there that 65% of people who apply hold degrees. And I think we said we needed to clarify that, to say out of everybody who applies, 5% of them would be those who are holding degrees. And it's not only young people, but it's a combination of those who might be youth and those who are not young people anymore. So that's the only thing that we wanted to clarify. But we accept and we agree that the nature of or whatever, if there's a 60% or 63% unemployment rate in the country, especially affecting young people, as an organization, SASSA will definitely be affected as well.
I'm glad you clarified that, because I was surprised that you were surprised. But, you know, just still on that point, as you say, you meet as different government departments. Have you raised this concern with the other agencies and departments? And what has been the response in terms of perhaps looking to programs and whatever else you may come up with to address this issue of youth unemployment?
Look, Sakina, I think one of the best department, it's a Department of Small Business. We also have a very good relationship with our sister unit, which is the National Development Agency, so that in some instances, because we have a database, we can then be able to share this database with other entities and so forth. And we know that the National Development Agency will then be able to take the database, try to make sure that it identifies people with certain skills and so forth. But we think that the information we have as an organization will definitely help as we engage with other government entities. But obviously, our intention is to make sure that we do the processes as easy as possible. But we think that other government departments, like in this instance, I spoke about Small Business National Development Agency, they can then be able to tap into the database and see how can there be some intervention, because we also appreciate, we also understand that the level of unemployment in this country sits at about 63%.
Here's one from Executive Mayor who says, this thing of SASSA is confusing. April payment received in July, May pending, June declined due to income over 350 Rand, which, by the way, wasn't meant for spending, rather for travel to see a sick person. July pending. Kanti, how does the system pay?
No, it's true, Sakina. Hence, we took a decision as management that because we don't want to confuse the public, we want to make sure that by the end of August, we do not necessarily have the backlog. But if it's still pending, obviously, the processes might be still going through certain assessments and so on. And we think people must just be patient when time is ready, because we do the reconsideration, Sakina, every month, and because the conditions of people change from month to month. So we are compelled as an organization to make sure that we assess if the situation is still the same compared to the situation which were the previous month, because we are going to have to account at the end of this grant. And when we account, we need to make sure that we have done things, we have done them correctly so. And one of the things which you don't want to do, Sakina, is to be found wanting, in a sense that we pay people when they have money. And we'll have to account to the AG why we gave people who have money in their account the 350, which is meant for those who don't have anything.
So perhaps just to clarify, if you have 350 Rand or more in your bank account, you do not qualify for the SRD grant.
Currently, you do not necessarily qualify. I mentioned earlier on, that's why I had to be extremely careful, Sakina, because the issues of regulations belong to the Department of Social Development, and the department will make the pronouncement once all the processes have been sorted out.
Paseka Letsatsi will, of course, follow up with you again, but thank you so much for that update. SASSA spokesperson Paseka Letsatsi speaking to us there. Mickey Maraba, thanks so much for that. Mickey says, the people that he assisted have actually been paid. Happy for those people I assisted, free of charge. They are currently benefiting from the grant. And personally, I also got some feedback from some of you that you were paid, and I am really grateful for that as well. So we'll park that there. Regular updates with SASSA, but for now, it's time for news.